Hi, everybody. I'm here with Jamy Conrad. She's an HR executive who helps leadership teams solve the people problems spreadsheets can't, building cultures we trust, growth and collaboration thrive. As a well-known HR executive in the HR community, she leads conversations on empathy, leadership, and AI in HR. Career wins include cutting regrettable turnover over 40% to under 5% in 2 years, saving companies over $500,000 annually in benefits, and HR tech changes, boosting new manager effectiveness scores by over 28% in a year. Combines data, empathy, and relentless curiosity to unlock human potential and scale high-trust workplaces. So happy to have you here today, Jamy.
Thanks, John. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation with you today.
And we in the preamble there, we were sort of knocking off about AI and use cases, like not only in the business, but in the HR tech stack and in dealing with employee engagement and things like that. Like that to me is a bit counterintuitive because it's a people profession. And here we are bringing the bots in. And so it's like, how do you square the circle of like, we want to engage employees better. We want to deal with things on the HR side better, but we also don't want to cut the human out of a people centric function. Right.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Be nice to
Yeah.
know.
We talk about this a lot in HR and some of the communities I'm in. The whole point of having AI come into your HR tech stack is to help make you more effective. And you want to make sure that you're focusing on those key and critical administrative tasks that free up your time first. But it goes deeper than just like on the surface. It's also about how you're leading the conversations in your organization. In order for AI to be successful in your HR tech stack or in your HR department, you also need to be having those conversations at the executive level with the peers at the table and the other functions and make it a very cross-functional conversation. We've seen, recent CEOs making decisions to have the CHROs and the chief people officers leading their technology decisions and frameworks in the organization instead of their technology and product leaders. And I think that's a big distinction and a boon for us in the HR profession right now, an opportunity for us to have even more impact and influence on the way of work, the future of work, how people are showing up and what their employee experience is. That can't exclude the technology that's being used in their day-to-day operations. And so with having the conversation with your peers at that executive level and thinking about it more holistically, it's no different than any other HR solve. You're trying to help solve the business problems. AI in HR then is about helping the business solve that problem, but you can't lose sight of the fact that these are still human beings. And that's truly the crux of AI and HR and keeping it human is you're trying to impact that employee experience in a positive way. If you remove the human element out of it just to include AI for some reason, then you're impacting that employee experience. Is it positive? Is it negative? And if it's negative, what are you doing it for? What are you really going to accomplish? Are you going to be able to accomplish that business need if you're having a negative impact to the employee experience? My guess is probably not. And so as you go through that decision making in that frameworks that you're using, that's kind of the litmus test for, I think, AI and HR is how is that impacting the end user's day-to-day experience in the workplace? And is that going to help them be more effective? Is it going to help them be more efficient? Could be in your department, could be outside of your department.
Do you have any metrics on like adoption with AI and how that's affected the employee experience? I mean, the employee scorecards and the quarterly reviews and, the little opinion surveys that are being sent out through Workday and whatnot. I wonder, it seems like there's a lot of employee anxiety about that, not only about using the tool, but also just like the talk of like, oh, there's jobs going to be lost. And when they see it encroach into the business, then they start to worry about their own job, right? It's not like directly affecting them, but not yet. But it's like that fear, that dread people have of like, technology coming in. So.
In some organizations, it is. It's already started to eliminate roles. One of the people or companies that I follow is there's an AI for that. And they are constantly putting out information on new chatbots and new platforms and technologies that have adopted Gen AI and agentic AI frameworks and into their technology. And they have a running list of how much of certain job titles have already been replaced with the ability from the AI functions. And the fear is definitely there in employees, and rightfully so. It's already happening. The adage of AI is going to replace you, there are some roles that is probably true. Some of your junior entry level internship roles, there is true, but it doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity for you to take on new tasks, new skills, or have you up level with AI in what you're doing. I think it was Stanford that recently released a report where they enabled a group of customer service representatives to use AI in their role to help them navigate customer conversations or decision making trees. And it actually up-leveled their entire staff and improved customer service scores because it helped the customer service reps make decisions faster or have the information that they needed in order to navigate those conversations more effectively. It doesn't mean that the AI was making the decisions for them, just enabling them to be more effective in their roles. And so I think that's a great example of you can utilize AI. AI could, sure, you could have a chat bot on the other end answering a lot of those questions, but there's still a need for that human connection, especially when you're talking about frustrating situations. We've all been on the phone with, we had those instances where we need to call a customer service line and we don't even know if we're going to speak to a human or not. And the idea of not speaking to a human, that still is a little frustrating for most people. They want to have that human interaction. They want somebody to empathize with them, to relate to them and understand what they're doing. So I think that Stanford report is really interesting. And if you haven't had a chance to check it out, I would highly encourage it.
Yeah, I mean anything that can reduce the wait time, because when you're on the phone, they're like, "Oh, hold on, let me bring up your account," and then they have to look at your account. So if there's an AI bot that can give them a summary quick and be like, "This is the deal or the problem," or they've already called in about this 5 times this week. You
Mhm.
don't have to read all the notes. Here's the summary. Like, give them a credit. So yeah, there's definitely ways to streamline things or make things just people more effective in their jobs for sure. And that's the positive aspects of what all this technology changes. I guess the issue we're seeing is just like the pace of change is outpacing our ability to regulate on it from a government standpoint, ability to um, just keep pace with jobs and change the economy fast enough to make sense with what's happening. And so there's going to be, it's like bringing a whole new technological revolution, right? Here we are again, is not that old, but I mean, I grew up with like computers going into the internet was starting then, right? AOL and all that. It's crazy just seeing, how much change there's been. People have to really be adaptable. I think that's the biggest thing I would say to anybody is like keep being dynamic, be adaptable, constantly learn because you got to keep your skills up and you never know what's going to be the latest trend or something you're going to have to learn. So
Yeah,
how does
that
that work?
learning mindset is really important right now as fast as technology is changing.
How would you say on the HR tech stack, how has that changed for companies? Like, or what would you say would be a beneficial thing to bring in right now for, mid-sized companies looking for, an advantage, let's say, with the tech stack? And please don't say Workday. I've seen some integrations with Workday take like a year and a half, and it's pain.
Yeah.
It's just pain for the company. But
Or
anyways,
longer.
yeah. Not to say it's not good. It's just if you don't roll
Yes.
it out properly, it's a nightmare.
Well, there's so much technology out there, and that includes the HR technology space. We've got a lot of options and more emerging all the time. A couple things that I would say around HR technology. You want to focus on technology that takes psychological human behavior into consideration when they're creating their roadmaps for their product and their platform. If you want an HR technology, it's not just about having a technology to do stuff anymore. It's about enabling the HR team. It's about enabling the business. And if you're going to take consideration for that employee experience, you want that roadmap to have some sort of at least input from these are the psychological behaviors that occur, or these are the things that trigger certain psychological behaviors to occur. And how is that going to impact your employee experience? I think specifically around your performance management, your skills development, and professional development, those are really important. And then that manager employee relationship and interpersonal relationships. How are we working together? Those are the technologies that really need to consider that human aspect, the human nature, the psychological behaviors. The other thing I'll say is because there's so much technology and more emerging every day, one of the biggest things that you can do is if you're not interested in updating or changing anything in your tech stack, don't feel obligated to do so just because there's something new and shiny coming out. It's okay to keep what's been around for a while. It's also okay if they haven't started utilizing AI. But what you can do is find those organizations that are focusing in on people analytics and the so what of people analytics. There's some really good emerging technologies right now that you can feed all of your data into one. So you can have all these best in class experiences and have all these best in class technologies, or you can keep your antiquated systems. But in order to up level as an HR professional, it would be great if, right? That's the key to all these technologies. It would be great if my information could be all in one space and I could have a technology that helps me synthesize that information and feed me the metrics that I need to know about in real time. And there's some pretty cool technologies that are coming out that are enabling HR teams to be able to do that. And then answering that so what question. What do we do with that information?
Are you talking about like, because I see there's a lot of like customer intent data. You're talking about like employee intent data or like dashboards that would give you real time info. So
Yeah.
are you, is it also like integrating with all your legacy systems with like webhooks and things like that? Or how is,
Yeah, APIs, webhooks, could be. It could just be your tech stack in general, you can start there so that you're not being too invasive. Obviously, if you wanna really roll it out in a way that's gonna be meaningful, you'll pull in the entire workspace that people have access to. A lot of organizations aren't ready for that yet. Start with your own HR department. Start with the data that you're already using or pulling or analyzing on a regular basis and use that to get you started in what those dashboards, those technologies that can help you with the dashboards and then the synthesizing of that information first.
so what's the difference with that between like vanity metrics that you're seeing in HR that come up sometimes and like the metrics that actually drive the business or help improve retention and so on? Like, what do you think is important to track with your dashboard? Like, if you have all the
Well,
data you could possibly get, what are like the top five? Like, you really need to know these points. Like, this is important rather than just it just looks good on paper, but doesn't mean nothing.
yeah, I don't want a bunch of pretty visuals just to have pretty visuals.
Yeah.
That's that so what? Okay, I've got all this data. What does this data mean? What is what it why is this important to us? And that's where I think some of these AI technologies from you bring all your data into that and they're helping to answer. Okay, we've synthesized all this information here, you need to pay attention to the manager that's over in finance that's been here for 10 years because they've got the highest turnover rate in the organization and they've consistently had the highest turnover rate in the organization. So here's where you need to pay attention. Here's 5 action items that you could do today. Here's some metrics that you could use to help track if those actions are being effective or not. And then, here we can schedule your follow-up conversations in 30 days. So it's not just about having all that data is really important. You got to have clean data and having it, but the AI technologies that are really making a difference are the ones that are taking it to the next level. Now what do we do and why do we do it and how do we track it to see if it's effective or not?
Yeah, no, that's helpful if you have like it'll roll out a program almost to assist with that. So program design is something for sure some people struggle with, or like how do you what's the most effective way to approach a problem. So, and you can train can you train the bot for doing like that as well, like based on your company's principles or anything like that, or?
Absolutely. You feed what your core values are, your mission, vision, values statements. You can allow certain culture aspects to come in. You can, create culture surveys in them if you want to that help to also feed into, this team seems to be lower, they have lower engagement scores as related to this core value. And, here are those action items for that.
I wonder who wins in that argument if the bot tells you, what if the bot tells you you're the problem? What do you do? You're like, shut up, bot. You're like, delete notification. Time to scrap the bot.
You take a long, hard look in the mirror and lean into what it's trying to tell you.
Yeah, no, that's pretty funny. I mean,
It's true though.
the thing is, I guess the issue we find with AI is even though we assume that it's completely neutral and unbiased, but it's trained on flawed data. I mean, humans trained it, so it's going to get our biases. The worst of us is magnified, I find, with some things. How do you, if you're like, I'm sure you've heard of people complaining about, oh, the ATS AI is screening out my resume. That's a big thing I hear in recruitment a lot. Of people are applying to jobs and the AI is screening them out. Like, how much truth to that have you seen in the talent function now? Or is there like AI bots doing all the screening when you're getting 1,000 candidates, or is there still a
Yeah.
human process?
Yeah.
It is
No,
AI.
and the bias is still there. It really is. And, the way that I continues, I'll check ChatGPT every once in a while. The prompt that I use to check it is I'll give it the exact same prompt, but the last part of the prompt is write this is from the perspective of a male, CHRO, write this perspective from a female, CHRO. And if there's differences, then there's still biases, right? And so that's my check. Like I'll give a whole big long prompt of what I want. I'll add that final line in there and see how different the outcomes are based off of just that one word in the prompt.
Are you seeing a lot of difference when you do that?
There's still a lot of difference there, unfortunately.
Is that just like the tone, or is there like other things that are in there? Because like it could try to sound like feminine, but that's not like, and that doesn't really
Yeah.
affect the outcome, or it's more than that.
Yeah, it's the how often do they pull metrics in to support the argument? It happens more often when you have from a male perspective than you do from a female. And that's still happening. The last time I did that was just a few weeks ago. There's still definite biases in there, unfortunately. But I am very optimistic when it comes to AI. It is a training tool, so we just have to keep training it.
Yeah, I mean, it's only as good as its data and its training, so that's the big thing. So I guess, as they say, it's as worse it's going to ever be right now, right?
That's
So
right.
that's, I guess, that's also a really good selling point for AI, because whenever something doesn't work, they just say, "Well, it's as worse as it's ever going to be right now. Better soon." That's such a good cop out. To be able to say that, like, it's trash product, but don't worry, like, it's the
It's going
worst.
to get better. Hang in there with us. It's going to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
better.
hang in. Don't worry. We're iterating so fast. It's a rocket ship here. Like I hear that so much from these AI companies. It's unreal. But I
Yeah.
mean, in some cases, they have improved quickly.
Yeah.
So, we all went through COVID, and we went through some roller coaster, let's say, of hybrid, remote, on-site work and so on. And we're seeing like a really big push now for return to office. I mean, I've viewed it as a kind of a sneaky way to reduce workforce, because people are going to quit if you ask for return to office. So a lot of companies were looking to the overhired during COVID, and now they're trying to scale back a bit, especially in tech, I think, and there was a lot of that in healthcare too. So, how do you approach this when you're dealing with people across different states, and some people want return to office and hybrid and flexibility, and like, to add to that question, it's like when it's a candidate market, which it was in COVID, people could have more leverage to push capital to ask for hybrid or remote work. Now, when it's a employer's market, they're really pushing hard to, push the pendulum back the other way. How are you finding all that, just from company culture and everything else?
This is such a hot topic.
Yeah.
And I'll try to stay neutral from an HR standpoint, and then I'm going to tell you how I really feel about it.
It's okay. Tell us
The
how you really feel. It's fine.
There's definitely pros and cons, no matter which way you look at it. And I think that the VC-backed organizations, they have those opportunities still. I just read a article, I think yesterday or this morning, talking about quiet hugging. People are hanging on to their roles because the market's not great. The candidates are hanging on to their roles rather than it being a candidate market like what you were talking about. And so they're willing right now, employees are willing to put up with whatever they have to put up with just to keep a job because of some of the changes that have happened in the tech sector, because of the uncertainty with the economy and some of the things that are happening overseas. But that doesn't mean they like it. It doesn't mean that it helps engage them. It doesn't mean that they are leaned into this idea that I need to be in the office every day. So a challenge, this will tell you how I really feel, a challenge the HR leaders and the executives in organizations. Are you promoting return to office in a way that builds the collaboration into it from an operational standpoint? Or are you just bringing people in because quiet quitting, or you want the quiet layoffs where you're not actually announcing it, you're just making a decision and hoping that people don't come through? What is that reality? I'm very much a human-centered design leader and thought professional. I want to make sure that any business decision we're making, that we're also taking into consideration how this impacts the human being on the other end of the decision. And I guarantee you that if you're making a business decision without thinking about the human impact long term, that your short-sighted decisions are going to create a ripple effect that you're not ready for, or is not going to serve your business when you need it to. It'll serve it now, but how's that going to serve you 12 months, 24 months, 48 months? Now, some people, like VC-backed companies, some of the PE-backed companies are like, we don't care. We're not going to be around in 5 years to find out. We need to do what's the right thing today, and then we'll fix it later. But the changes are happening so fast. In general, change is happening so fast in the workplace right now, and there is so much change fatigue that every time that you think you can pivot and pivot effectively, if you're 12 people in a room, you can do it. You can do it more often. But if you're 50 people, if you're 100 people, if you're 300 people and you're spread out across a remote environment right now, that pivot takes so much longer. Every pivot takes so much longer and it costs the business money. And so there has to be an ROI calculation for the human impact when you're making those business decisions, because there is definitely a human aspect to that ROI of that change.
Yeah, I know for sure. If you have 20% of your people leave because of the policy, the opportunity costs, the scaling up and having to rehire, like the cost of that too. Like every time someone leaves, they say it's like 230% of salary to replace
Mhm.
them at least. So yeah, I totally get that. But I just view it from a talent lens of like, you talk to 8 out of 10 candidates, they're going to tell you they want at minimum hybrid 3 days a week. That's the compromise post COVID that people are okay. 3 days a week I can do. But if you're looking for talent and you're not in a major urban center where there's a lot of talent nearby, like if you're like Wausau, Wisconsin, which was a
Mhm.
client there, like you don't have the talent pool in your area. So you're going to have to import talent and relocate it all the time to be able to fill your office. So does it
Yeah.
make sense for you? And just being able to attract talent to your company, if you're like in New York or LA, okay, like totally get it, um, we were dealing with a company in San Diego. They had their everyone was in office. Okay, it makes sense. I mean, if people want to commute for 3 hours in LA, like in the area, like okay, and it seems to be normal, but not for me. And for
Mhm.
people that like have families too, like I just having some flexibility, especially with the amount of work people are now working side hustles now because of the economy and how tight it is, inflation and housing. They're working 2 3 jobs, and so it just becomes very stressful. And that's kind of like the being employee centric, thinking, okay, yes, we can get everybody into the office, but if everybody's stressed because of the commute and lack of flex, then are they as productive, or are they just phoning it in when they get to work because they're like, I really don't want to be here. I
I
just put
hate
my
it
eight
here.
hours and I'm putting my 8 hours and I'm booking it home because I got to pick up the kids from school, and so I can sympathize with people depending on the stage of life you're in. It's very difficult. I know for me, like I have 3 kids. Like I would not be working in office. Like no way. I can't. It's just it's not feasible. So
Well, I think, you know, if there's silver linings to the pandemic, the silver linings for me is that it did humanize us a little bit. It didn't matter what class, what your background was, what your race is, none of that mattered. It humanized. We were all going through this human experience. And you had people at all levels, all backgrounds, all cultures that were experiencing this traumatic thing. And we capitalized on that human experience for just a little while. We were able to start talking about health and well-being. We were able to start talking about mental health. We were able to start having some of those really human conversations. And now that it's not a candidate market, we're forgetting already in this short amount of time how those human experiences impacted the fact that we have kids in the background and the dog's barking and there's somebody here to repair the fence and like all these things, and we were still able to get the work done.
yeah, no, it's definitely a thing. I mean, during COVID, I literally had my newborn twins on my lap during like national meetings that I was holding for my team at the time. My whole team, I still talk to them. It's been a while, but they still remember. Oh yeah, I remember. How are the twins doing? Everybody knows. Everybody knows the twins
Yeah.
because they saw them grow up basically during that time, right? It's it was a nice time that we came together in some ways, but how quickly as you said, how quickly we forget the lessons learned, and we go right back to another extreme of like, oh, everybody 5 days a week in office and be happy you have a job. That's kind of the mentality we're hearing now. I always tell employers that all the chickens will come to roost as soon as the market turns. If that's how you're going to treat people that harshly,
Mhm.
then as soon as they have options, they're going to exercise them. I know I talk to those executives like all the
Yeah,
time.
all the
They're
time.
like, and they're literally telling me like, "Oh, I can't move right now. It's really the economy. You're seeing people
Yeah,
get laid off. It's scary. I don't want to leave. I want to, as you said, hunker down in the job. If they're like, hey, if a remote position comes up with this equivalent pay or close to it, I'm out of here. Like, give me a call. You
yeah.
know, because we finally got to see it, right? We got to see it, and I think one big part of that was neurodiverse people, but also introverts. And I'm being an introvert myself, and also others I spoke to that are introverted. They loved the work from home. They're like, I don't have to go and try to talk and make friends with all these people I don't really like, or it's like if you're an introvert, you need your quiet, your peace, and time to recharge and all that. And it actually was more beneficial. Like they were more productive, I think, working from home because of just the way they're wired. And it was the first time I think in history that I've ever seen them actually talk about neurodiversity, introversion, mental health. Like that was forefront. I like to see the HR function continue to sort of support on that, and not just like it was a nice we did it because we had to, rather than it makes sense to do it because it affects people and it affects our productivity. Like there's always an ROI you can circle back on, right?
And there's a balance to that on the human side. I mean, during the pandemic, we also saw spikes in substance abuse,
Oh yeah.
and pain management and the, benefit claims. Being a benefits leader, saw all those claims just like skyrocket for rehab and all of these different things happening. And that hasn't started to come back down. So there's still an underlying issue from a mental health and wellness and an aspect of that pandemic and what it triggered that we haven't solved for. And we're already trying to push back into these old habits that we think that that might solve it. I don't think so. I think you're just creating another level of stress that is going to keep pushing that forward. We need to find ways to bring that back down, and putting all these rules back in place to try and put structure and control back in place. Is that going to fix it? I don't think so. I think we've already come through that knothole. That's like now we're trying to put a round peg into a square hole.
Well, not to get into like all the politics and everything else going on, but I would say there's in society there's a lot of stress, a lot of anger, a lot of just lack of civil discourse going on, right? And
Yeah.
and people are just stressed too. Like I think inflation really has hurt people a lot. like the cost of food, housing, everything. And so people are just stressed in general. So that comes out in everything they do, from work, from how they deal with one another, how we talk to one another, right? And yeah, like I don't know what the solution is for that besides like get off social media, because
Like
it's
watching the news. I don't know.
stop doom scrolling. Yeah, I mean, it seems like I blame a lot of our ailments on social media for just like hyping us up so much and getting the temperature so high, right, with things, which is all, algorithms and whatnot that are the way it's sort of coded. So from an HR perspective, though, like with benefits, like how do you see benefits changing? Like, I guess you've also had to navigate some pretty hot issues lately with how the benefits package you have in one state is not the same as what you'd have in another state. And I'm obviously referring to the big elephant in the room here with regards to reproductive rights and women's benefits and women's care and so on. How do you deal with that from an HR when you're like, you have a team and your team is all these different states with all these different rules, and how do you treat people equitably when that happens?
Yeah, I think this comes down to your business culture. What do you want to be known for? And how much of a risk tolerance do you have in your organization? The decisions aren't easy. And no matter, we're very divided in our political views in the United States. And so no matter which way you lean, there's going to be employees that align or don't align with what decisions you make. That's normal. But it's also part of being the leader of that organization. And enabling the leadership to have those hard conversations, make those tough decisions, and still, hopefully, have people want to stay. They're able to see the why behind it, share the why behind it. What are you going to do? The rate of laws coming out at the state levels, at the local levels, is very challenging, to say the least, as an HR professional when you're working in a remote or even a global organization. There's not a lot of tools out there that are helping. Some HR communities are trying to help figure it out, advocating at the uh, legal level, legislation, lobbying, partnering with some of those corporations that are lobbying effectively, to help pull some of that in. But you have to be involved. You have to stay in the awareness rather than pull yourself away from it. And there's also challenges about you as an HR professional. You can't help but let your own personal biases and beliefs and philosophies come into play in some of those ways that you're advising and leading. You see it at the CEO, you see it in your executives. And as neutral as we try to be in HR, there are still some situations that hit you on a personal level, and it's really hard to keep that neutral stance sometimes. And so, a lot of times, if you find yourself in that situation as a leader, that's when you get a legal expert involved in the decision making, or, some of those kind of things. But there's no easy button out there. I've actually advised I advise on HR technology quite a bit. I had conversations with a few different founders that were trying to help solve for the compliance of the changing employment landscape in the United States. And they backed out of it completely after 6, 9, 12 months of investment because it's so complex and it changes so often that they didn't feel like they could keep up. So their AI platform couldn't keep up with the regulations and how complex the details are in some of those different situations, from states, local, county, cities. Like, there's just so much of it happening. So I think that's probably something that will come about in the future, is we'll have some technology out there to help us. But right now, it's still just as challenging as it was 9 months ago, and sometimes even more so because of the rate at which those changes are coming about.
Like, sorry, I would say it's almost like an unintended consequence that the politics of things creates barriers to interstate business because of these new regulations and policies and so on, right? Like I would say, normally you want, in an ideal free market, right? You want an easy transfer of goods and services between states because that helps the flow of goods and services and make the economy run smoothly, right? When everyone has the same playing field, it's easier. So by this sort of state rights focused, let's call it, it actually causes barriers to business because we're like, your employees here or the regulations here don't allow that. But in our state, like marijuana is a perfect one where, you have different states where now they can't, like with the money, they have basically like vaults full of cash because they can't put it into the federal banking system because
Mhm.
the federal banking system is still on the federal level, it's illegal. But so they have the local bank that's like flush with dollar bills. It's almost like Scarface or something. That's just like one example of like how it happens, right? So it's like besides the cultural war about things, it's also the how that affects business, I think. And maybe sometimes we're not thinking about, making things easier for business and obviously for people as well. So that's up for the politicians to figure out. But yeah, like you want it to be free trade, right? Like as
Yes.
easy as possible. And I assume with benefits that also just shopping for benefits must be a nightmare
It
where
is.
you're shopping. Is it like a different vendor for every state now? Is that where it's gone or?
The big ones, they offer like a they offer national plans, so that makes it a little easier, but you have to be really careful when you go through your geo reporting, right? Are they may be in every state, but are they in the zip code that your employee lives in? The one employee that you have in Florida that's, in a remote location, are they there? Are they, so they may be in Florida, but are they where you need them to be in Florida? Do they have providers where you need them to be in those different states, in those different municipalities? The challenge there is you're almost forced to work with those well-established and least liked insurance carriers just in order to get your employees the baseline of what it used to be from a benefits package. And that's, here's your two plans, here's your, to pick from, one's high deductible, one's PPO, good luck. And go from there. And that is just the foundation of what is expected from employees from a benefits package.
Yeah,
They
that
have
makes
a
sense.
whole nother it's a whole bunch more expectations when it comes to benefits. And if you listen to what your employees need and want, the different phases of the life cycle may influence what your benefits package could be or should be. Insurance is just the baseline.
Yeah,
What
that
else?
makes
What
sense.
else? What else?
And how's that affecting like recruitment as well? Like, are you being intentional with recruitment, saying, "Oh, we're not going to recruit from certain states because it's just too hard to get people onboarded over there"? Or is it like I know a lot of people have said, "Don't we don't want to work with people in California because of the tax burden."
Mhm.
That's been a thing for some employers. I've heard them talk about so much regulation with the California employees. And that's definitely why a lot of people have moved to Texas now and businesses as
Mhm.
well, Austin and whatnot. I mean, we've moved tons of people to there. But how are you seeing it in terms of like from a strategic like talent standpoint? Like, is that affecting your decision making, or is it like no, we're gonna get the talent wherever it is, or how has that been?
Uh, I think that also depends on your level of risk tolerance in the organization and how much cash you have, how flush you are with those extra funds to be able, because it does take extra money to support hiring from anywhere. That could be whether that's US or global. There's costs associated with those hiring decisions. If you've got the extra cash and you want to bring in the best talent, then you will do what it takes to do that. If you can't do that, and most small businesses can't do that, then they're absolutely still making decisions. This state has pay transparency laws, and we're 25 employees. And if we put pay transparency on our job ad, that's going to kill the morale of the 25. And we know that's probably not the right thing, but we can't afford to do anything different right now because of the economy. So it becomes this big whirl of what are the right decisions and how does that play into where you're trying to go and how fast you're trying to get there as an organization. There's still a lot of businesses that just can't hire in certain areas or have taken the stance that they're not going to. Then we will not advertise in that state. We will not work our very first screening from a candidate standpoint is, do they live in these states? And if the answer is no, then they're screened out immediately. You can auto reject them and not even look at them because we can't even have those conversations because our business is not in a place where it can afford to take on those additional risks.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that's write your state representatives.
Yes.
I mean, if that's a barrier, that's wild to me that, that's actually like it's a legitimate, business concern for costs because of that, right? So, I mean, I guess it's always been because, like, as we say to people, like, there's premium states where, California, New York, the salaries are 25% higher.
Mhm.
That's more of like a population thing, but now it's also regulation and taxation and all this other stuff that's affecting your decision making. But how do you find talent's going to go now with recruitment with AI obviously coming in as well? Like, have you seen like in the talent function itself, like them bringing in a lot more tools? Like, is that definitely a thing now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I see happening right now that I'm a big proponent of is on go to market teams, there's usually, especially in tech, some sort of enablement function that's in supporting them. Sales enablement, go to market, marketing, CS, enablement. That's also some of those same tools and ideas are starting to be brought into the recruiting side. That includes AI. It may not include AI, but it's that mindset of building a pipeline of candidates and enabling the recruiters to be able to move those candidates, just like you would move customers through your customer funnel, you would move candidates through your candidate funnel in that same framework. And so there's more and more enablement tools coming into play, playbooks that are coming into play for the staffing and the recruiters. And I think that that's going to continue to happen. And I think that's a good thing. Recruiters, so how many recruiters at the end of the day go, gosh, I loved taking all of those notes from all the different telephone screenings that I did today. Nobody says that. They hate all the, I have to document everything. I have to figure all this out. Now you can have some of those AI tools help enable that, make you more effective, more efficient. Of course, you still need to make sure that the AI is capturing things appropriately in your conversations as it's doing those summaries for you. But if you can get you 70% of the way there in your note taking, and that makes for some better job satisfaction on your recruiters.
Oh no, for sure. I guess the one thing I would say is I've heard a lot of people say they've had to do initial interviews now with either recording a message, like record a video for an answer, or they've had actual like interviews with AI bots. And I just wonder, I mean, it seems like most people that have done it haven't like enjoyed that process. It's like it feels impersonal. They feel like they're not important. It's like, oh, I'm talking to the robot because I'm not that important to actually talk to, or So I don't know. It's
It's still clunky. There's still a lot of clunkiness, which makes for it to feel uncomfortable. There's still a lot of fear with AI in general, and so that makes for some uncomfortable. We're in this, n- you know, another knot hole that we need to go through in agentic AI and adoption of, and how we feel and interact with it, and how much of a part of our lives it's going to be. We're still trying to figure that out as a society. I think it's coming at us fast and furious, and and some of us are trying to hang on and see where it goes and try and lead it so that it goes in the right direction. And some people are just completely resistant. I'll let it go through. It's the same crossing the chasm as any other big change or technology.
Yeah. Like on that, I would say like we've taken the stance of we're going to maximize use of it to make us more productive with our executive search and so on, and be, from note taking to research and things like that. But we're going to double down on having, real face to face conversations with people. I try to do everything on video with people rather than phone calls or emails and so on, just to have that personal touch, because at the end of the day, I think it is relationships, at least at the executive level. Like, and I don't believe AI will ever be able to vet like executive presence and being able to find culture fit ads or culture fits for organizations and that kind of thing. There's a lot of nuance at the executive. I think it's more suited for like entry level positions of like, oh, we need to hire a technician, and the AI can quickly do an assessment of like skills and skill testing questions and behaviors, like how reliable are you to show up to work, like the basic kind of screening you need to do, which is pretty simple. It doesn't require a lot of nuance or a lot of probing. It's more of just, can they do X, Y, and Z? They can lift 50 pounds without difficulty. Oh, they're certified in WMIS, or OSHA, so I mean, I think at some level, at the exec level, I think it's going to be used as a tool to add productivity, but I don't think it's going to replace at the exec search level. But for everything else, I mean, yeah, like I can totally see it the way it's going. I mean, it could replace a lot of those, simpler tasks and initial screenings and so on. But I guess my concern is more of like the customer or candidate experience, right? Because people already complain so much about, I got an automated reply rejection letter. So now I get automated interviews and automated rejection letters. It's like totally impersonal.
Unless you're an AI enthusiast and what you want is a company that is heavily leaned into AI, then you're gonna love those, and you're gonna be want to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Well, I guess the one thing missing is just like they forget, like you have to kind of also sell the job to the candidate. And if you're the front person, the first interaction that candidate has with the company, if they like that person that they're interviewing with, they feel better thoughts about the company in general. So it's like you're building goodwill through your process, and your interview process starts at like even from just the application, right? Like, you hear people complaining, I logged into the portal. I had to create a login, and then they made me copy my whole resume again into their ATS system and submit it. And for me, I've just stopped doing that. Like when I was applying, I was like, I'm not going to rewrite my whole work history of 15 years with the dates, the exact dates, into your ATS because you can't parse my resume correctly. Like there's a good case for AI. Like take my resume and parse it yourself. Like I'm doing your data entry job for you.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a lot to be said about like thinking of the candidate experience, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Well, any last thoughts in terms of upcoming things in Q4 here? That's going to be a interesting topic or hot topic to discuss.
Well, I think that the push for AI and AI adoption is going to continue through the end of the year, and I think bold prediction that people are gonna actually start pulling back on it after the beginning of 2026. We've already started to see some of that shift. Too much backlash, too far too fast in certain organizations, and I think that that's probably gonna be more of a topic in 2026 than it has already started to be.
Well, I'll take that prediction for next year. We can come back in a year and see where we're at. That'd be good.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming on today, and it was a nice chat.
Same. Appreciate it. It's been great.